All right, our next speaker is Abby Shultz. I really have a lot of regard for this project and the process through which she went to generate this project. This is an issue that I've wanted to address with the capstone literally since the second or third day I got here. I think I started sending emails like, hey, I'd love a student to work on a topic a lot like this. And I just want to point out the execution of this project and the identification of this audience as important, I think, in terms of consumer behavior outside of this. There's just a lot of nested levels of cleverness in this project, and I think that's what I really took out of this year with Abby, is just a lot of potential and a lot of ability and a lot of thinking about different things that connect going on at the same time. So I'm very excited to see what Abby is going to do with her career, and I think we're all going to be very grateful that she's on this side of things in terms of climate. So Abby, the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Gabriel, and hi everyone, thank you so much for being here. My name is Abby, and my project is Climate Change in Music Festivals, a study of Miami's Ultra Music Festival. So I lived in Miami for the past few years and had the chance to attend Ultra last year. I was struck with the number and scale of environmental initiatives and awareness campaigns that Ultra was doing. While Ultra has over 60 environmental initiatives active, there was no systematic data on festival goers' attitudes and beliefs about climate change. Whether attendees actually support the efforts of Ultra, whether attendees would be willing to participate themselves in climate action, or would be willing to pay a donation. By designing a survey that asks festival goers about their climate beliefs, willingness to pay for sustainability initiatives, and factors influencing their attendance, I aim to fill that gap. So in this presentation, I'll go through some of the background and reasoning behind this project, the research question, methodology, and analysis, and finally, I'll go through some of the results of the survey. I will end with a discussion of the key findings, the limitations, and some of my recommendations. So Mission Home is Ultra's sustainability initiative dedicated to reducing the festival's environmental impact. Mission Home has been active for 5 years and has already diverted over 300,000 pounds of waste from landfill, achieved 50% waste diversion in 2024, and has eliminated over 90% of single-use plastics from the festival site. Mission Home has been verified as the most extensive sustainability program of any EDM festival in the United States and was the first American festival to achieve Oceanic Global's prestigious Blue Standard. Now, despite the efforts events make for sustainability, the environmental impact of large-scale music festivals is substantial. There are key areas that music festivals have on the environment are with travel and transportation, waste and consumption, energy use, and water management. Audience travel to a music festival accounts for the highest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions associated with the event. In a study conducted by Ultra last year, they determined that a significant portion of travelers from across the nation and internationally use either planes or cars, the most carbon-intensive modes of transportation. So the main drivers to implementing environmental policies at festivals are strong environmentalist organizational values and reputations of the festivals. There is a changing social norm and increasing societal pressure for festivals to adopt sustainability practices because of societal changings. There are also significant financial benefits to adopting environmental policies. Festivals can save water and energy, they can optimize waste management, and stimulate the economy and tourism of the host city. Now, the main challenges to implementing sustainability at a festival are lack of funding and financial barriers, limited autonomy when festivals sites are not owned by the festival organizations, and behaviors and attitudes of festival goers. So festival goers are crucial to the implementation of sustainability strategies, and they tend to have a high willingness to support and act. Younger attendees in particular are known to be primary influencers by changing their behaviors upon attending festivals or making environmentalism a factor in determining what festivals to attend. Research also shows that women are far more likely to consider climate change a serious problem and take action. A large influence of the development and creation of this research, including both the creation of the survey questionnaire and the analysis of the results, was influenced by Noah Troutz's thesis project in the Netherlands in 2023. The objectives and hypotheses for this research were influenced by his results because he found that most attendees demonstrated a high level of environmental awareness and a willingness to engage in climate action and pro-environmental behavior. So this case study used a cross-sectional survey design to investigate festival-goer behavior, environmental attitudes, and willingness to engage in sustainability practices within the context of Ultra Music Festival in Miami. The primary objectives of this research were to evaluate climate-related attitudes and behaviors of festival-goers, assess a willingness to pay for a hypothetical optional eco-fee, and gather a better understanding of how climate change concerns influence festival attendance and behaviors. So the survey instrument was developed in collaboration with Mission Home's team at Ultra, and together we developed a 25-question survey that was distributed to all ticket buyers. The survey was developed on an online platform called Qualtrics and was open for data collection from March 1st until April 7th. The final data set included 158 responses, and there was an even distribution between males and females, and almost 70% of the respondents were between the ages of 20 and 34. Data visualization for this project was performed using Google Sheets to generate charts and summary tables. A geographic population heat map was produced using ArcGIS Online, and statistical analysis was conducted using IBM's Statistical Package for the Social Sciences, also known as SPSS. So for the results of the survey, many of the responses are visualized in my paper, but I picked a few figures that were most important to the context of my recommendations for this presentation. So first, this population map shows a distribution of home locations for respondents from the US based on the zip codes they provided in the survey. There are many clusters amongst major cities for home locations, but I found it really interesting to see how many had traveled from outside of Florida, especially far places like LA and Boston and Seattle. So next, this pie chart shows the percentage breakdown of transportation information to Miami for the festival. And as you can see, almost half the respondents are either flying or driving, while a third had already lived in Miami. This figure visualizes the response to the question I asked, which of these factors about a festival most influence your ticket purchase? The respondents were asked to rank 1 through 6, with 1 being the most important factor for ticket purchase and 6 being the least important factor. And a lineup of a festival was by far the most important factor. That was followed by location and price. And sustainability practices ranked at the bottom of factors. And finally, this pie chart is the main motivation behind calculating a potential eco-fee fund. The percentage of respondents that would be willing to either take climate action if it was encouraged or incentivized is over 90% of respondents. So to do a further analysis on this, I had 4 main hypotheses that I wanted to look into. A, being festival goers express a high level of concern about climate change. B, younger attendees are significantly more willing to engage in climate positive behavior. C, women report higher climate concern and a willingness to act and pay. And D, climate concern is positively correlated to a willingness to pay. So on a scale from 0 to 5, with 5 being the highest, respondents were asked to rank their concern for the threat of climate change. The average score was 3.9, which supports the assumption that there was a high level of concern about the threat of climate change. And in this bubble chart on the right, it visualizes the number of respondents for each combination of answers between climate concern and climate change knowledge. So climate change knowledge was also a question asked on a scale of 0 to 5, with 5 being extremely knowledgeable and 0 being not knowledgeable at all. And the size of the bubbles represent the frequency of the answer combination. So the highest frequency of answer responses were people who responded to having a high concern about climate change and a high knowledge about climate change, as indicated by the largest bubbles in the top right. So in my second hypothesis, the age categories were separated into 2 groups. 34 and younger was group 1, and 35 and older was group 2. A Mann-Whitney U-test conducted revealed a p-value that indicates willingness to engage in climate-positive behavior was not significantly higher among younger attendees as compared to older attendees. For hypothesis C, to do this, gender was compared to the question, would you be willing to take climate action if it was encouraged or incentivized? And the question, if given the choice to opt into an eco-fee, would you? Mann-Whitney U-Test p-values revealed that there was no significant difference in willingness to act or willingness to pay between men and women. And finally, the analysis of the survey question related to climate change concern and willingness to pay revealed a positive and statistically significant correlation. So this suggests that individuals who express high levels of concern about climate change are also more likely to indicate a willingness to pay for sustainable initiatives. So in order to translate these survey responses into tangible recommendations for Ultra, I wanted to determine a projected fund amount based on what festival goers reported their willingness to pay was. So over 82% of respondents said they would be either willing to opt into an eco fee or they would be open depending on that amount. And the survey gave the answer choices of 0%, less than 1%, 1 to 2%, 3 to 5%, and 6 to 10%. So the revenue projections were calculated using an attendance of 55,000 people per day and a general admission ticket price of $350. So the percentage of the ticket price that would result in the greatest fund for Ultra is a 2% eco fee, and it would result in over $100,000 to go towards sustainability. So over 20% of respondents reported that they were willing to pay at this price, and the optional additional contribution per person would be $7. The next highest fund amount was at 1.5%, resulting in over $76,000, and the individual optional contribution would be a little over $5. And finally, if the eco fee percentage that most respondents reported being willing to pay was implemented, the fund would be over $74,000. At this fee, the additional optional contribution would be under $3 per person. So based on my analysis and results, my 4 main recommendations for Ultra to implement is 1, implement an eco fee option. At a 2% optional fee, this has the highest potential to generate the greatest fund for Mission Home. And this gathered fund could be used towards growing Mission Home or implementing any initiatives that I suggest or any initiatives that Mission Home deems to be appropriate. Second, introduce sustainable transportation options and technology to future festivals. So with the results showing a strong support to not only take pro-environmental action, but also pay for sustainability and cleaner energy, this could be an opportunity to use that eco fee funds towards transportation technology. And while implementing clean energy like solar would be ideal, it's beyond the scope of what Ultra is able to do in the short term. There are a lot of high costs associated with renewable energy, and that is a considerable barrier to implementation. But there are lower cost options to support transportation infrastructure already in place or promote lower carbon options to attendees. So the results of the survey indicated that almost 25% of attendees either walked or biked to Bayfront Park for the festival. So it could be beneficial to partner with a bike share or e-scooter company to provide discounts the weekend of the festival. Companies like City Bike have zones all across Miami. In addition, any eco fee being implemented could be specified to go towards carbon offsetting. Consumers could be made aware of the fee going towards carbon offsetting beforehand, so it encourages that participation. 3, create incentives for climate positive behavior. The incentive could be a discount for food and beverages, exclusive perks and or experiences at Ultra. Contributors to the fund could also be given exclusive access to a festival entrance. And finally, continue survey data collection. Getting more information, such as ticket type and a multi-year data, refines the analysis and allows for better strategies in the future. Having a survey for a long period allows festival organizers to study and understand how the change and growth of attitudes and behaviors of attendees evolve as climate change effects become more prevalent. So several limitations apply to this data analysis. The assumption that all participants were general admission ticket holders may bias revenue estimates. The reliance on self-reported willingness to pay introduces a potential for hypothetical bias or strategic behavior. More limitations of this survey include respondents interpreting survey questions differently and design errors that also come along with a customized survey like this. And future studies may address these limitations by simplifying question and answer formatting as to reduce confusion, expanding identifying questions about ticket type, implementing incentives to reduce bias. They could also give more options for eco fee percentages instead of large ranges like I gave. And in conclusion, Ultra is in such a unique position to know what attendees want in terms of sustainability, and they have the extraordinary power to implement real change for our planet. With music festivals adopting policy and organizational change to limit their emissions and negative impact on the environment, we as EDM fans and festival goers can keep enjoying attending the festivals we love without damaging the planet. And before I end, I just really would like to express my gratitude to my capstone advisors, Josh, Millie, Joshua, and Mira. Thank you so much for your guidance during this. I want to thank Ultra for your partnership and openness to collaboration on this project. I also really would love to thank Scripps and the CSP administration, along with the Julia R. Brown Fund. Thank you for allowing me to go to Miami and to take these surveys, or implement these surveys. And to my cohort, thank you for your encouragement. It's been a really great year. And finally, my family, thank you for coming and thank you for always supporting me. Thank you. Questions?
Hello, I have a question. Hi, great job. I was curious if you had thoughts about expanding your survey to like the sponsors of festivals, which are so often products and things that are not super climate positive.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that would be such an awesome thing to do in the future. This being the first time, I mean, I was doing this, but also Ultra is doing something like this. I think after conducting this, there's so many ideas I have for what could be done in the future, including asking sponsors or stakeholders like that you don't necessarily think of instead of just festival goers. But I do know that Ultra has already expressed to me that they would love to continue doing this in the future, and I think they really enjoy doing this project as much as I did and having that data. So I would love to see if that could be done next year or sometime in the future.
Super cool, thank you.
Hi, wonderful presentation, super interesting. I was just curious about the profits of Ultra in comparison to sort of the fee, and if there was any sort of possibility of floating Ultra sort of instituting this first and like offering that as a perk as opposed to making the users pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
And also I saw that you had a picture of a paper that was looking at like music festivals in the Netherlands. I was wondering what sort of best practices and if there's any sort of like, communication between European festivals, which, of course they have different transportation options and a lot of things like that, but what sort of best practices and learnings might be able to be facilitated through that?
Yeah, I do know Mission Home, their sustainability initiative, has been active for 5 years. So they have mostly focused on sustainability and reducing waste generation and consumption. And so now as they're growing and being able to do more, they've started to try and calculate their carbon footprint. They have started expanding to more greenhouse gas emission type areas. So I know they're very much behind than like the Netherlands or European markets. When I was doing my literature review, most of my survey off of a thesis project that pretty much was looking at very similar stuff I did, but in Germany and the Netherlands. And there are very much big differences between the attitudes of people who are attending music festivals in Europe versus in the United States. But I do see there's sort of that transition, in the United States, a more pro-environmental and eco-conscious focus. I don't know if that answered your question, but yeah, I don't know exactly all of the nuances to the communications happening in, between Ultra and, Europe, but it would be really interesting to look into that, yeah.